So this is going to be a walkthrough of a project that I finished a few months ago. There's not anything overly unique through this workflow, but I just thought I'd talk about some of the challenges that I've overcome and maybe it'll help somebody. So the project was for an influencer that was launching a pack of tarot cards, and this is the final result that you can see, which I'm pleased with. And the client was also pleased with it. So this is the Maya scene. The assets were sourced from online, CG Trader, TurboSquid, etc. And then to light it, I've got a HDR. I've got an area light on the back of the camera, just so when the faces come up, you can see the faces nice and clear. And for the volumetric, quality of light, what I have got is I've got candles with point lights, and then atmosphere applied to it to give you this nice environment. The problem with this was, with the cards animated and this nice environment and the flickering effect of the lights, it was giving me very long render times. I later on found out that this was because of my CPU fan had came loose, and my CPU was having thermal throttling and had lost 90% of its power. Since then I have actually built a new computer, so I don't have this problem anymore, but this is how I overcame the problem. So one of the first things that I did was I set all the lights that were going to flicker, the candle lights, all onto their own light group. So each one of these is named with its light group. And then in my AOVs, for each one of those light groups, I have set them up with their own little expression so that it will it'll render. You should be able to see that in here. There's an easier way to explain this. So this is my first render, and I rendered this out as a still image in an EXR format, and I divided up all my specular diffused into AOVs. So the first light group that I had was candle 1. It's just this one candle, and then candle 2, and in this light group there's two candles, this one here, this one here. Then light group 3, that's candle 3. That's these two candles, and finally the last light group that is the HDR and the area light that's behind the camera. So that is what these here are referring to. And then what I did is I took that same thing and I did it with my specular as well, so you'll see that I've got the same light groups, and this is just the specular light. And this is done through my AOVs here. And this is what this expression is here. The Arnold documentation explains this technique very, very well, and if you're interested in using it, I would suggest reading through that. But these letters all mean what sort of ray that I'm firing, and then eventually at the end, this L.can1 refers back to this light group. And then I did the same thing with this one as well. So I've got the same light groups. You'll see that I've got the same diffuse. Candle 1, candle 2, candle 3. And then you'll see the full, because that's got the area light that's lighting up this, you can see a lot more of that effect than you can in the other one. But what you will notice in this one, it doesn't have the bloom and all the volumetric atmosphere that that this one has. So it means that this one rendered a lot quicker because it's rendering less. This was rendered as an image sequence, so this is all the cards flipping up and down. So now you have an understanding of the light groups that I set up and the AOVs. It'll be easier to explain the composite. So first thing that I brought in was my backplate. As I said before, this was just an image. And then up over here I have my image sequence. So the first thing that I did in the composite, just to point out that this is how I used to do my Nuke scripts. Since doing this project, I have actually been told that this isn't the industry standard way, and that this bottom line here should actually be going vertically down there. So I do it that way now, just to be in line with the way that it's established in industry. Right, so let's just explain stuff quickly. So the first thing that I was going to composite and set up is my backplate. So I've got my diffuse, my diffuse here, specular here, and then glow for the candles, and then emissions down here. I'll explain what's going on here quickly. So we've got my full light group for this diffuse. So that is the HDR and the area light that's behind the camera, and I've got the direct and indirect, just in case I wanted to change anything on those. And then I've got candle group 1, candle group 2, candle group 3, and I add all those together to make the light rig. So what I did then is I got a very handy script off Nukepedia, and this is a random sine wave generator. So if I go to curves, this will tell you what's going on. So this just puts a random sine wave in using these frequencies. So each group of candles has a random flicker effect controlled by this. Because the flicker effect is controlled by a node, even though each one of these nodes is random, I can use that node to generate the same flicker effect on each AOV. So you see that candle group 1 and candle group 1 come back to the same sine wave generator. This node is called the Curve Factory. The node is very useful, the information you can find here. So what happens then is, because this flicker effect on the diffuse will also affect the colour diffuse, what I do is I take the diffuse albedo and I divide it away from the light just to give me the light, so then that can flicker, and then onto that I add it back on, multiply it back on to give me the light just flickering. I do a similar thing with the specular, so it's exactly the same, it's just in specular instead, and obviously the candle group 1 goes to the same Curve Factory node. Divide it away, do a little bit of colour correction, and then that gives me the nice candle flickering effect that I wanted without spending time rendering all of these frames. So then I add ambient occlusion on top of that. Then I add a bit of candle glow onto it, and then I come to actually adding the candles in with alpha cards. So I've got a few different flame types, them offset slightly here and there, and then I use a position to point to give me a rough 3D object ink. What that allows me to do is it allows me to place the alpha cards where they should exist in the 3D space. I could also bring the geometry in if I wanted to, but I find it easier and quicker and lighter to use a position to point. If I brought the geometry in for each candle, it would take up time, space, and it's not really necessary just to lay out those candles. So add the candles in, add a camera in just so it's in the same position, and then on top of those candles, so these candles will flicker backwards and forwards like they would in real life. I add 2 glows, so this doesn't have the spread that this one has, and that just means that I get, when I combine them together, a more realistic candle glow. I screen that on top of my back plate, and then I add in my emissions to give me that nice atmospheric glow and the volumetric effect. So then I come on to composite the cards. So very similar to the back plate, well, it's identical, and obviously the candle group 1, candle group 2 comes back to my Curve Factory nodes to give me the same frequency of flicker that these ones have. And then I do exactly the same to the specular. And then what I do, because this render sequence doesn't actually have the emission AOV rendered, I fake it just because that saves me a lot of time and you can't notice the difference. Add the 2 together, do some color correction, grading, add a vignette on it, sharpen it, and that gave me the final rendered result. Hopefully this was interesting. If anybody has any questions or anything they would like to ask, don't hesitate to put it in the comment box. Yeah, hope you've enjoyed it.